Welcome to TICE News. Today we have with us Christophe Aulnette. He is the senior advisor at Apex, and we'll be hearing from him the AI revolution that has taken the world by storm, the Startup 20 initiative by the government of India. Hello, sir.
Hello,
Welcome
good
to
morning.
TICE News.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Sir, this Startup 20 initiative that has been taken by the government, what do you think of it? Do you think this is an initiative that should be taken by the next country that will be holding the presidency, which is Brazil?
Of course, because I think it should continue in the next presidency, but and because it's a great initiative. I think it's very legitimate for India with a very vibrant startup ecosystem to lead that, and also because the government is also pushing this want to make a startup friendly ecosystem. And I think it's great that the G20 countries came together and decided to formalize that initiative by a couple of things that are important. I think is a startup needs international development to be successful, particularly B2B startup. And when you want to go abroad, if there is a common vocabulary, at least a framework for common policies, it can be a great foundation for a startup in a country to have access to resources in other countries, to accelerators, mentors, venture capital, and also help to do international development.
So, as you mentioned, this Startup 20 initiative has will achieve the G20 countries settle on a common definition for startups, a common definition for the startup policies. So, this initiative, as you mentioned, is a great initiative and will help the G20s connect globally. So, what will be the impact of this initiative on the startup system globally?
Well, today the communique described a set of very clear policy in terms of how you help, you push alliances, you push incubators, accelerators, also a strong will to allocate more funding to startup with this objective of funding $1 trillion by year 2030. So those are good objectives. Now the key thing is how we move from there and show how we can progress. So I think the first benefit might be at least to put together what the G20, that Startup 20 has decided to push. It's called the Global Network Initiative, which would be able to link together focal points for startup in each countries. And I think the first step will be probably to have access to resources in terms of if I am in France and I want to move to India, where I should go, where are the resource I can call upon, and putting that network together through maybe just a website would be very helpful.
Okay. So you mentioned that this platform, G20 Startup 20 platform, will help the countries connect globally, the G20 countries globally. How do you think the EU, the countries in the European Union, connect with India? How will it blossom?
Well, Blossom is a great objective, but today I think the relationship between the EU countries and India, are more a partnership where actually, a lot of European countries have development centers in India, and but so far they don't see India that much and a country to export to, and because of some regulation hurdles, and maybe the first thinking for startup was to say, okay, I want to move to the US, but now I think the broad Asia market is also very innovative, and also the appetite for digital solutions is very strong. So it's true for ASEAN, it's true for India. I think those markets are now more and more interesting for European startup and European companies. So I see this G20 Startup 20 initiative as a way to just not only look at India as a great resource for development, but also as a place where you can go actually abroad. And the same way for Indian startups, see the European market. You know, in Europe, we have a European Startup Network Alliance, and the European Union is driving also this idea of building a common framework in terms of policies. And the European Union market is a 450 million consumer, which have a good spending power. So I think it's a very interesting market also for Indian startup who might generally think of US as the first one as well.
Okay, sir. Sir, this Startup 20 initiative and constantly the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Narendra Modi, has been very vocal and has been very inclusive about pushing the Indian startup ecosystem on the global scale. So, how do you think how do you think India will emerge? Will it be a very big player? How do you see India as a emerging player in the global economy and the global startup ecosystem?
Well, India is already very strong given the number of engineers that are graduated every year. You know, the NIIT, the Management Institute. I mean, the education system is very strong, and just look at big scale ups around the world and the number of Indians, not just as engineer but also as CEO of companies. You know, I've been working for Microsoft for many years, and I have seen also in the 90s and the year 2020s and 2000s we see a lot of Indian coming, and now they are at the top management of the companies. So I think the question for I think for India is really to make sure that maybe to open the market a bit more to outside, to have a regulation that is more consistent with the regulation of European Union or the US, so that we can move abroad both ways.
Okay.
That's the way to do it. If you want to become an export force, you also need to, in a reciprocal way, to open your market.
Very well said, sir. And the top CEOs of the tech giants, for example, Sam Altman just visited India, and he mentioned that India has a great role to play in the AI revolution that is happening right now. So, what are your thoughts on the AI revolution that has taken the startup ecosystem and all the service industries by storm?
Yeah, I think ChatGPT, I mean the generative AI, is a big. It's a disruption, probably one of disruption of the size of when the internet burst. You know, in the 90s. It's gonna be a fundamental change and a huge impact on the way we learn, we work, we live. So it's really a revolution, and OpenAI is a first example, but I think we will see a lot of others big startups emerging around the LLM. And it's true that Sam Altman was on a world tour, and he was also in Europe, and I think he called for. I think he has kind of double language. On one side, he said, "Okay, we need to have more regulation," but at the same time, he was saying, "Okay, but regulation should not." Prevent
Affect the small
innovation.
startups,
So,
yes.
so it was kind of a double language, and it's a very competitive world. And I think there is no way we can stop that innovation from happening. So, the big difference with AI is that with you need to feed the algorithm with data.
Data, yes.
And data, when you see the size of the Indian
India
market,
country, yes, it's
of
pretty
course,
huge.
it's pretty huge. So you can get a lot of data at the same time. That's why also we need to have initiative as Startup 20, because we need to open. Because if you want to build a very strong generative AI capacity based on data, you cannot just train on the Indian data. You need to train on India, on Europe, on US, on China data if you want to be a worldwide player. So this openness is absolutely required. At the same time, there needs some
Regulations and common
regulation,
standards.
just at least in terms of ethics, how you protect personal data, how you avoid too many biases, and I think this the G7 actually
Mhm.
has launched what they called I don't know if it's a nice word, Hiroshima process, which is about building that regulation, because I think the leader of the G7 have also clearly said that there needs to be some regulation,
Mhm.
but we'll have to find the right balance between regulating and also letting innovation blossom.
True. So you mentioned that a lot of new AI startups will happen and they will come into the picture. But there have also been speculations of how the startups who will not be able to who will not be able to indulge or who will not be able to keep up with generative AI or machine learning or LLM, they might also crash and they might also get out of picture, and that may lead to a lot of job losses. So how do you see this as how do you see this revolution? Is it something very positive? Because a lot of startups who are product based, how do you see, will they be able to integrate AI? Will it lead to a lot of job losses or it will create new opportunities?
Well, I think it's a very good question. The Today there is not one company in the world that is not asking itself what is the impact of generative AI on my business. I
Mhm.
can see that, in at least in Europe, all the big Fortune 500 there, all the executive committees are looking at that and say, okay, what is the impact for any business might be impacted. That's true for startups, but startups, a key word for startup is pivot.
True.
So, well, if I have built a startup that is doing a very nice, I don't know, software, CRM software, then ChatGPT is coming. So I say, okay, how can I, include
Integrate it, yes.
a chatbot in my product? How can I can, inject innovation into my product? So startups, they have to be flexible. They have to be able to pivot. It's the right time. All the more as today we are in a the fundings has really being has shrunk, and the only funding that is really skyrocketing
Is
is on
AI.
AI and
True.
generative AI. So I think for a startup, the best advice is to understand what is the impact of the generative AI, what kind of opportunity I can seize, and adjust my pitch and my product to be able to get that funding. And with regard to the impact on jobs, we see a lot also generative AI more broadly as an opportunity to have to increase productivity,
Okay.
in the countries, particularly for maybe a bit different for large demography as India, but for European in European Union, we desperately there is no unemployment anymore, and the race for talents is very very intense, and a lot of companies see the ChatGPT generative AI revolution as a way to be much more efficient, doing more with less people, and also the working laws are getting a bit more flexible in terms of hours work and so on and so forth. And there is a lot of people are seeing that in a positive way, saying, okay, generative AI might enable to generate GDP per inhabitant growth just by injecting more productivity in the economy.
Okay. So you mentioned that the startups that are working around AI have been able to generate and produce a lot of investments, but the other SaaS startups, they have seen a crunch of funds because of the SVB bank collapse. So how do you see the future of these SaaS startups?
Well, we have. It's not the first time we have that. I'm old enough to have lived 2001 bubble burst, then the 2008, 2009 after the financial crisis, and now 2011 was not very good, and now it's another one. So in those periods, uh, you have to remind that it's Airbnb, Uber were born in 2009, Facebook and Google after the 2001 bubble. So there will be opportunity, particularly around this generative AI. So a new era of startup will emerge. And for the one that have raised funds and now the only thing that they have to do is to focus on cash and making sure they find some profitability. So there will be casualties for sure, but it's part of this. Um, this destructive or constructive capitalism, and we have to accept it. In the venture capital is a high risk business.
So my last question to you is: how do you see the India-France partnership blossoming into something wonderful? Because both the countries have good relationships, and due to this Startup 20 initiative, how do you think India and France partnership, especially the startup ecosystem of both countries, will be benefited or affected by this initiative?
Yeah, I think India and France have a strong partnership. The thing is, we are also we are much smaller, but we have a lot of very good engineering schools. So the education system in France is very strong on mathematics. On you see a lot of R&D centers in France as well. So I think there is an opportunity to have more education academic partnership. That's one. The other one is to make sure that India can also supplement the need for R&D forces for for France, and also seeing France as a hub for European Union. Now UK is no longer in European Union, so you can consider if you want a route to market in Europe, it makes a lot of sense for India, because France, in terms of ecosystem, President Macron has really pushed very hard with what we call the French Tech. And in terms of startup funding, we were the highest country in terms of funding last year. So there is a very strong push. So we could establish links so that India can see France as a route to market in European Union.
So thanks, Christoph. Thanks for coming on TICE News and sharing your insights and all the information regarding generative AI, talking about AI, the regulation, and its impacts on the job. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.